Grinding It Out, The Making of McDonald's by Ray Kroc. Picture this. It's 1954, and you're a 52-year-old salesman who spent decades hustling on the road. You've peddled everything from paper cups to milkshake machines. Sure, you're doing okay, but you're hardly living the dream. You've got diabetes, your joints ache a bit, and let's be real, most folks your age are already eyeing their retirement plans. Then one random day, you catch wind of something weird. There's this tiny burger joint out in the middle of nowhere, some dusty California town called San Bernardino. And get this, they're ordering an insane number of your milkshake mixers, not just one or two, but 8 machines. That's enough to pump out 40 shakes at once. Something doesn't add up. Your curiosity gets the better of you, so you hop on a plane and drive out to this desert spot to see what's going on. What you discover isn't just another burger stand. It's something that makes your jaw drop. You're watching what looks like a food assembly line. So beautifully simple, so perfectly efficient. It takes your breath away. Families are walking out with bags full of 15-cent burgers and crispy fries, and suddenly you see it. The future. Not just yours, but America's future. That salesman was Ray Kroc, and that little burger joint? Yeah, you guessed it. McDonald's. Today we're diving headfirst into his story, straight from his own book, Grinding It Out. This isn't your typical rags to riches tale. It's a raw, honest look at what it actually takes to build something massive. This book has sold millions of copies and become essential reading for entrepreneurs everywhere, because it reveals a truth we often forget in our instant everything world. By the time we're done here, you'll get it. The biggest empires aren't built on lucky breaks or sudden flashes of brilliance. They're built on something much more powerful, something every single one of us can tap into. They're built on grit, stubborn persistence, and the relentless everyday commitment to what Ray called grinding it out. Ray's journey didn't just magically begin when he was 52. It started way back on the streets of Oak Park, Illinois, just outside Chicago. Born in 1902 to hard-working bohemian immigrant parents, young Ray wasn't exactly a star student. Books? They bored him to tears. He was all about action, a kid who lived in his dreams, so much so that people called him Danny Dreamer. But here's the thing. His dreams weren't just idle fantasies. When he dreamed up a lemonade stand, he'd actually go build the thing and work it until every last cup was sold. This became the pattern of his entire life. For Ray, work wasn't some boring obligation. It was his favorite sport. He used to say, "Work is the meat in the hamburger of life." While other kids were out playing, Ray was knocking on doors selling coffee beans, helping out at his uncle's soda fountain, and even launching a little music store with his buddies. Working at that soda fountain taught him something crucial. You could win people over with genuine enthusiasm and a smile. You could convince someone to buy a sundae when they'd only come in for coffee. That lesson stuck with him forever. Music was another natural talent. His mom taught him piano, and before long he was playing in bands and at a local radio station to make extra cash. He was what they called a chic back then. Confident, ambitious, making more money as a teenager than his own father. But the musician's life wasn't where he was headed. His real gift was sales. At 20, he landed a job selling paper cups for the Lily Tulip Cup Company. This was 1922, and convincing people to buy paper cups was no joke. Restaurant owners would brush him off. "I've got glasses already. They're way cheaper." But Ray could see where things were heading. He saw an America picking up speed, a world that would need convenience and hygiene. For 17 years straight, he pounded the pavement and became the company's top guy. He learned how to read people, perfect his pitch, and most importantly, know when to shut up and close the deal. By 35, he'd made it. Nice house, comfortable life. He could have coasted from there. But Ray had this philosophy. As long as you're green, you're growing. As soon as you're ripe, you start to rot. He was still green. That's when he spotted it. this weird, bulky, six-spindled contraption called the multi-mixer that made milkshakes. It was invented by one of his customers, Earl Prince. Most people saw an ugly machine. Ray saw gold. He saw a way to sell more shakes, which meant more paper cups, which meant more business for everyone. So he did what most people thought was insane. He quit his secure job, mortgaged his house, and became the sole distributor for the multi-mixer. His wife thought he'd lost his mind. His friends whispered he was making a huge mistake, but Ray went all in. For the next 17 years, he traveled the country lugging around a 50-pound sample case, selling multi-mixers to every soda shop and dairy bar he could find. He was grinding it out, making decent money, but always searching for something bigger. Which brings us back to that dusty California town in 1954. What made that little restaurant so special? When Ray walked up to the window, he wasn't just another customer. He was studying a system. The first thing that hit him was the menu. It was brutally simple. Burgers, cheeseburgers, fries, shakes, and soft drinks. That's it. No chicken, no fancy sandwiches, no complicated orders. By keeping it simple, they could nail two things: quality and speed. He watched the crew, all guys in crisp white uniforms, moving with this incredible precision he'd never seen before. It was like watching a choreographed dance. One guy on the grill, another prepping buns, a third handling fries. Every single movement was stripped to its essence. No wasted motion, no wasted time. The result? A customer could get a hot burger, perfect fries, and a thick shake in under a minute. It was Henry Ford's assembly line, but for food. And the quality was undeniable. Pure beef patties with exact fat content. Top-shelf Idaho potatoes, cured in the open desert air to turn their sugars into starch, creating fries that were crispy outside and fluffy inside. Ray became absolutely obsessed with those fries. He later said, "The French fry would become almost sacrosanct for me, its preparation a ritual to be followed religiously." That night, Ray met the owners, two brothers named Dick and Mac McDonald. He was practically vibrating with excitement. "Why don't you guys open more places like this?" he asked. "You'd make a fortune." The brothers just gave him this look. They pointed to their big White House up on the hill overlooking the restaurant. "That's our home," one said. "We sit on the porch in the evenings and watch the sunset. We don't need more headaches. We're happy right where we are." They had zero ambition beyond their one perfect little spot. Something ignited in Ray Kroc. This was it. The big opportunity he'd been waiting for. If they wouldn't chase it, he would. He asked them who they'd get to open more stores for them. Who could we even get? They wondered. Leaning in with absolute certainty, Ray said, "Well, what about me?" They made a deal. Ray would become their national franchising agent, getting 1.9% of gross sales, though he'd have to give the brothers 0.5% of that. He was 52 years old, and he was starting from scratch. He flew back to Chicago, not as some triumphant hero, but as a man possessed by a vision nobody else could see. His wife was horrified. His country club buddies whispered that he'd finally cracked, trading a respectable business for a 15-cent burger stand. And honestly, his troubles were just getting started. The contract with the McDonald brothers was a nightmare. It said he couldn't change the building plans without written approval, sent by registered mail. But the plans were designed for California's desert climate. No basement, no furnace. When Ray called to explain he needed these things for Chicago winters, they'd say, "Sure, go ahead." But they refused to put it in writing. It was maddening. Ray later said, "It was almost as though they were hoping I would fail." He was technically in violation of his contract from day one. Then came an even bigger gut punch. After pouring everything into his first model store in Des Plaines, Illinois, he found out the brothers had sold the exclusive franchising rights for Cook County, his own backyard, to someone else. They'd just forgotten to mention it. It cost him $25,000. He didn't have to buy back the rights to his own territory. He was drowning in debt. His multi-mixer income was the only thing keeping the lights on, covering salaries and rent, while he slaved away building McDonald's from the ground up. He'd show up at the Des Plaines store before the janitor, mopping floors if needed. He'd work all day at his Chicago office, then drive back in the evening to check the restaurant, sometimes getting into shouting matches with the manager over a dirty parking lot or a sign that wasn't lit. He demanded perfection. Nothing less would do. And then there was the great French fry disaster. He'd memorized the brothers' exact process, but when he tried it in Illinois, the fries came out limp and disgusting. He was frantic. The fries were crucial to the whole operation. After weeks of failed experiments, he finally cracked the code with help from the Potato and Onion Association. In California, the desert air naturally cured the potatoes. In his humid Illinois basement, they were just getting soggy. The fix? He stuck a giant electric fan in the basement and created his own desert wind, blowing on those potatoes 24/7. This obsessive attention to detail would become the McDonald's trademark. Ray knew he couldn't build this thing alone. He needed people, and he had this uncanny ability to spot real talent. He hired a young woman named June Martino as his bookkeeper. She showed up on a stormy day in a worn-out coat, looking like she'd been skipping meals, but her eyes had this fire in them. She didn't know the first thing about bookkeeping, but Ray saw her integrity and hunger. June would become one of his most trusted advisors, and eventually the corporate secretary of McDonald's. Then came Harry Sonneborn. This former Tasty Freeze exec saw the Des Plaines store and immediately knew it was a winner. He offered to work for just $100 a week. Ray was broke, but he recognized he needed Harry's financial brain, and Harry came up with the single most game-changing idea in the company's history. He told Ray, "You're not in the hamburger business, you're in the real estate business." The problem was, Ray was only making pennies from food sales, not nearly enough to fund serious growth. Harry's brilliant move was creating a new company called Franchise Realty Corporation. This company would buy land and build the stores, then lease them to franchisees. The franchisee would pay monthly rent, or a percentage of sales, whichever was higher. This created steady, predictable cash flow and, more importantly, a massive portfolio of real estate that kept appreciating in value. It was pure genius, transforming McDonald's from a franchise operation into a real estate empire that happened to sell burgers. The final piece was a young guy named Fred Turner. Ray spotted him working the grill at the Des Plaines store for $1 an hour. He saw Fred as a natural leader with an instinctive feel for the business. Fred was a details guy, just like Ray. Together, they perfected the McDonald's system. They redesigned the bun, standardized the burger patty to exactly 10 per pound, and created the first formal training manual that would grow into the legendary Hamburger University. Fred Turner would eventually become president and CEO of McDonald's, Ray's hand-picked successor. Ray often said, "I never had a son, but his name is Fred Turner." With his team in place and the real estate model humming, the company started exploding. But the McDonald brothers were still a constant thorn in his side. Their contract kept holding back development. Ray was building a national brand, but the brothers, other California licensees, were a mess, selling pizzas and burritos, refusing to cooperate with advertising. In 1961, Ray knew he had to buy them out. He asked them to name their price. Their answer was jaw-dropping, $2.7 million. $1 million each, after taxes. It was an insane amount. Ray didn't have anywhere near that kind of money. He and Harry went to their insurance company partners, but got turned down. For a moment, it looked impossible, but they found a financial group willing to put up the cash in a complex deal that would ultimately cost the company $14 million. It was a steep price, but worth every penny. Ray Kroc was finally free. But the brothers had one last bitter twist. At the very last minute, they insisted on keeping their original San Bernardino store. They wouldn't even let him keep the McDonald's name on it. It was a betrayal of a handshake promise that Ray never forgave. Years later, he opened a brand new McDonald's just 1 block away and, in his own words, ran them out of business. With full control, Ray unleashed his complete vision. He built the company on a simple but powerful philosophy, QSC and V, quality, service, cleanliness, and value. This was his religion. He believed the corporation's job was helping individual franchisees succeed. He refused to get into the supply business, arguing you can't be someone's partner while also trying to profit off selling them stuff. This principle, which seemed backward to many people, saved McDonald's from the conflicts of interest that destroyed other franchise systems. He also had an ironclad rule: no payphones, no jukeboxes, no vending machines. Those things, he said, attracted the wrong crowd and disrupted the family atmosphere he was determined to protect. Even as the company grew into a corporate giant, Ray stayed hands-on. He'd scout new locations himself, not by studying spreadsheets, but by walking the streets, visiting local bars and supermarkets, getting a feel for the people. He famously said you could learn everything about a competitor by looking in their trash cans. And yeah, he actually did it himself, in the middle of the night. Ray's story also has its complicated personal side. His first marriage to Ethel fell apart under the weight of his business obsession. He found love later with a woman named Joni Smith, who happened to be married to one of his franchisees. Their romance was long and difficult, but they finally got married in 1969, a union that brought him the personal happiness he'd been missing. In his later years, he poured energy into new ventures. He bought the San Diego Padres baseball team in 1974, saving it for the city. At the first home game, disgusted by the sloppy play, he grabbed the stadium microphone and told 40,000 fans, "This is the most stupid baseball playing I've ever seen." Pure, unfiltered Ray Kroc, right there. He also started the Kroc Foundation, focused on medical research into diseases like diabetes, arthritis, and multiple sclerosis, conditions that had touched his own life. When he wrote this book in 1977, McDonald's had just hit 4,000 stores. It seemed impossible, but he was already dreaming of 10,000. He died in 1984, but his vision never stopped expanding. Today, there are nearly 40,000 McDonald's restaurants worldwide. Ray Kroc's story ends with his favorite quote, a philosophy that explained everything about him. Press on. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. He was an overnight success, all right, but as he loved to say, 30 years is one hell of a long night. So what can we actually take from a life like Ray Kroc's? It's easy to look at those golden arches today and think McDonald's was somehow destined to become this untouchable corporate giant. But grinding it out pulls back the curtain and shows us it was never guaranteed. It was fought for, crisis by crisis, day by day, by a guy who simply refused to quit. The most powerful lesson here isn't about business tactics or franchise models. It's about mindset. It's the huge difference between seeing an obstacle as a dead end versus seeing it as just another challenge to figure out. When the McDonald brothers wouldn't put their approval in writing, most people would have walked away. Ray found a way forward. When he discovered they'd sold his own territory behind his back, he could have sued or given up. Instead, he paid the price and moved on. When his fries were a disaster, he didn't compromise. He invented a solution to make them perfect. This is what grinding it out really means. It's not glamorous. It's not about that one brilliant light bulb moment. It's about 1,000 unglamorous moments of showing up, solving the next problem, mopping the floor, checking the trash, making one more call when you're exhausted. It's about loving the process of building something, brick by brick. For anyone listening to this, especially if you're young and just starting out, this story destroys the myth of overnight success. Ray was 52 when he found McDonald's. He'd already lived a full life before that moment. His real success was built on everything he'd learned in the decades before. As a salesman, a musician, a small business owner, every failure, every lesson, every connection became a tool he brought with him to San Bernardino. Here are a few practical ideas from his life you can use starting right now. First, Master the fundamentals. Ray's obsession was QSC and V: quality, service, cleanliness, and value. He knew that if he delivered on those four things consistently, everything else would take care of itself. What are the fundamentals in your life? In your work, your studies, your relationships? Are you actually mastering them, or are you looking for shortcuts? Excellence isn't one big moment. It's a habit built on doing small things right, over and over. Second, stay green and growing. Ray's belief that, when you're ripe, you start to rot, is a powerful call to never stop learning. He was never the smartest person in the room, but he was always the most curious and willing to learn. He surrounded himself with people who knew things he didn't: financial wizards like Harry Sunborn and operational geniuses like Fred Turner. Never be afraid to admit what you don't know, and never stop seeking out mentors and knowledge. Your growth stops the moment you think you've got it all figured out. And finally, press on. This is the heart of everything. There will be days when you feel crushed, when your best plans fall apart, when people you trusted let you down. In those moments, talent won't save you. Your education won't be enough. The only thing that'll carry you through is your own persistence. That simple, stubborn refusal to give up. That's the one quality that separates people who dream from people who achieve. That was a summary of Grinding It Out by Ray Kroc. We've covered the core of his incredible journey today, but I've got to be honest with you. A summary can only show you the map. The real treasure is found when you walk the path yourself. The true power of this book is in Ray's voice, his blunt honesty, his humor, his unshakable belief in himself. It's in the small stories and raw emotion you can only get from reading his own words. This summary is here to help you decide if this is a journey you want to take. If anything we've talked about has sparked something in you, then grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning business. It's an experience that might change how you think about work, success, and the power of your own determination. There's a link to the book in the description. Also, if this summary brought you any value, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and join our community. We're exploring the greatest minds in the billionaire's bookshelf, and I'd love to have you along for the next adventure. Let's keep growing together.